All right then, welcome back to Study Hall, you lot. It's time for another deep dive for all you curious minds out there. And today we're going right into the heart of something I reckon most of us in the UK have probably agreed to without even glancing at it, Facebook's terms of service.
Oh, yeah. Those...
You know that ridiculously long thing you just scroll through like lightning just to hit that agree button?
It's practically a digital rite of passage at this point.
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing. Those terms, they're not just legal mumbo-jumbo. They actually tell us a lot about how Facebook ticks and how it uses our data. So yeah, buckle up, because what we're about to find might surprise you a bit.
Right.
Let's kick things off with Facebook's whole spiel about that personalized experience. Connecting people, building communities sounds all lovely, doesn't it?
It does on the surface.
Right.
But it's crucial we understand how that personalization actually happens.
Okay.
Facebook relies massively on the data it gathers from us. Every comment, even how long you linger on a post, it all gets fed into these algorithms.
So hang on, it's not just about showing us ads, then it's about shaping our whole experience on that platform.
Exactly. Facebook uses your data to curate your news feed, suggest groups and events. It even tries to predict what content you'll find engaging.
Like it's building this digital map of what we like and what we're into.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so imagine you've been browsing online for, let's say, a new pair of trainers.
Right.
Suddenly Facebook starts showing you ads for all these sports shops and fitness groups. Coincidences? I don't think so.
Wow.
Have you ever noticed anything like that in your own feed?
What's really interesting here is that Facebook doesn't actually sell your data straight to advertisers.
Oh, so they say?
Yeah, instead they use it to create these super detailed audience profiles.
So hold on, they're not selling our data, but they are creating these profiles. What's the difference then?
Think of it like this. They're not handing over your name and address, right? But they are saying, we've got this group of users, they're aged 18 to 35, live in London, and are mad about football. And then advertisers can target their campaigns at these specific groups.
So even though they're not selling our information directly, advertisers are still getting a pretty clear picture of who we are and what we like.
Exactly. It's this level of detail that makes Facebook's advertising so powerful, and it's all built on the data they collect from us.
Now, this brings us to another biggie in their terms. The content we share, when you put something up on Facebook, you're giving them a license to use it.
Yes, the wording's a bit complicated, but essentially you're giving them a non-exclusive, transferable, sub-licensable, royalty-free worldwide license.
Okay, well, hold on, break that down for us. What does that actually mean in plain English?
It's kind of like lending your mate your favorite book.
Right.
They can read it, lend it to someone else, even photocopy a few pages, but they can't say it's theirs and you still get it back.
Oh.
That's sort of like the license you give Facebook. They can use your content in all sorts of ways, even stick it in their services or ads, but they still have to acknowledge you as the original creator.
So they're basically borrowing our content. And here's something that really jumped out at me. Even if we delete a post, Facebook can keep a copy.
Yeah, the terms say they might keep content for technical reasons, investigations, legal obligations, or to comply with requests from the authorities.
Gosh, think about all the photos, videos, random thoughts you've shared over the years.
Right.
It's a bit creepy, isn't it?
It definitely raises some big questions about who owns stuff online and whether anything truly disappears.
Exactly. And even if you hit that delete button, your digital footprint might still be hanging around on Facebook servers.
Like a ghost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And what about deleting your whole account? Is that a clean break?
Not really. There's a waiting period, could be up to 90 days before your account's fully gone.
Wow.
They say it's for technical reasons, potential investigations, legal requirements, that kind of thing.
90 days, that's ages. And even through all that content we've shared with others, like in group posts, might still be out there.
That's right. The deletion mainly affects your individual account, and the stuff directly linked to it, anything shared elsewhere could stick around.
So even if you try to disappear from Facebook, your digital echo might still be hanging about. It's like trying to erase your footprints on a wet beach.
Yeah, I like that.
The tide might wash them away, but the mark's still there for a while.
A very apt analogy. It really shows how tricky it is to control our digital footprint.
Right. Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about another important part of the term's liability. Facebook makes it pretty clear they're not liable for much, even if something goes wrong on their platform.
Yeah, they've got these specific limitations of liability written in there saying they won't be responsible for various types of damages, including indirect, incidental, consequential, or punitive damages.
Okay.
And they really emphasize that they're not responsible for how other users behave or what they post.
So if someone posts something totally false and nasty about you, or if you fall for some scam on Facebook, you're basically on your own.
That's basically it. Yeah, they argue that they're just a platform, not a publisher, so they can't be held responsible for what other people do or say.
So it's like they're saying, we provide the marketplace, but we don't vouch for the vendors.
That's a good way to put it.
And to top it all off, if you do have a legal issue, you have to deal with it in California no matter where you live in the world.
Yeah, the terms of service say any dispute resolution has to happen in California, USA.
So if you want to take Facebook to court, pack your bags for a trip across the pond.
Looks like they've thought of everything.
They have, haven't they? We've uncovered quite a lot in this first part of our deep dive.
We have. It's amazing how much is hidden in plain sight.
It is. Isn't it Facebook's terms of service are a real eye-opener?
Absolutely. They reveal a lot about how the platform works and the power dynamics at play.
And how much we might be giving away without even realizing it.
Precisely.
Right. Welcome back to Study All. In part one of our deep dive into Facebook's terms of service, we found some pretty surprising things about how the platform works and how it uses our data, didn't we?
We did. It's amazing how much we just agree to without really thinking about what it all means.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this part, I want to focus on what Facebook expects from the users. It's not just about what they can do with our data, but also what we can and can't do on the platform.
Right. The terms of service lay out a bunch of commitments users have to stick to, starting with that age restriction.
Yeah, you have to be at least 13 years old to use Facebook. That seems pretty straightforward.
It is, and it's a legal requirement in lots of places, including here in the UK.
But then they've got this whole section on what you can and can't actually share.
Yeah, Facebook has these community standards and content guidelines that everyone has to follow.
Like no hate speech, no bullying, no spreading fake news, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Pretty standard stuff, really.
It is. These rules are supposed to make it a safer and more inclusive space for everyone. They ban content that's illegal, misleading, discriminatory, or fraudulent. They also have really strict rules about infringing on intellectual property rights.
And they're serious about enforcing these rules. They can disable your account or even shut it down completely if you break the rules.
That's right. They've got a few ways of enforcing things. They can take down content, restrict access to features, or suspend or ban accounts altogether.
So it's not just a slap on the wrist. They can actually kick you off the platform. And for a lot of people, that's a big deal.
It is. Facebook's a huge part of so many people's lives, both personal and professional. Losing your account can have a real impact.
Makes you wonder how they decide what goes too far. It's a lot of power for a private company to have.
It's a really complicated issue and one that's caused a lot of debate. Trying to moderate content on such a massive scale is tough. There's always the risk of bias or censorship.
Definitely food for thought. And speaking of rules, they also have a whole section on intellectual property.
Yeah, the terms of service talk about how copyright works when you share your own stuff on the platform.
Okay, so if I upload a photo I took or a video I made, I still own the copyright to that, right?
You do. You keep the intellectual property rights to anything original you create and share.
But by putting it on Facebook, I'm giving them permission to use it in certain ways.
Right. You're giving Facebook a license to use that content as part of their services. They can show it in your feed, let other people share it, even use it in ads, though they always have to say it's yours.
And like we talked about before, this license sticks. Even if you delete your content, they can still keep a copy.
That's right. And it shows how important it is to really think about what we share online and what that could mean.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about content and copyright. What about this rule about using our real names?
Right. The terms say that users have to use their real names, the same name they use in everyday life.
I get the idea they want to stop fake accounts and make people more accountable for what they say online, but it feels like a privacy issue, too.
Yeah. It's a valid concern. There are good reasons why someone might want to use a different name online, maybe to protect their identity or just to keep their online and offline lives separate.
Exactly. And what about people who use stage names or have changed their names? It seems a bit unclear.
It is, and Facebook's been criticized for how they've handled these situations in the past, but their policy is based on the idea that using real names makes it a more trustworthy and authentic environment.
It's a tricky balance trying to weigh up transparency with the right to privacy and self-expression.
It is, and as these online platforms become more and more a part of our everyday lives, these issues are going to become even bigger.
Okay, before we wrap up this part, let's touch on account suspension and termination. Facebook can be pretty strict about enforcing its rules.
They list various reasons why they might suspend or terminate an account, things like spam harassment, impersonating someone, promoting violence, or repeatedly breaking their community standards.
And they can do this without warning, right? You're
Gotcha.
scrolling through your feed 1 minute and the next you're locked out.
It can happen, although they usually try to give people a chance to appeal or fix the problem. They can take immediate action in some cases, especially if there's a risk of someone getting hurt.
So it's probably a good idea to brush up on their rules and make sure you're on the right side of them.
Definitely knowing the rules of the game is important for using any online platform responsibly.
Right. We've covered a lot in this section. All the things Facebook expects from its users, from content guidelines and intellectual property to real names and account security. It's clear that using Facebook responsibly means understanding their terms.
Absolutely, being informed is crucial for a positive and safe online experience. And don't forget, if you ever have a legal issue with Facebook, you'll have to deal with it in California.
Right, that whole California thing is still on my mind, but let's save that chat for next time.
Sounds good in part 3. We'll look at the more technical side of Facebook's terms of service, how they collect and use data, and the limits of their liability.
It's been eye-opening so far, hasn't it?
It has. We're really getting into the nitty-gritty of how these platforms operate.
All right, then welcome back to Study Hall for the final part of our deep dive into Facebook's terms of service. We've talked about how they personalize our experience, how they use our data for advertising, and what they expect from us as users. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. It really has. We've uncovered a lot about the ins and outs of the relationship between Facebook and us, the users.
We have, and for this last part, I reckon it's time we tackle the big one, data. Even though we don't pay for Facebook with actual money, it's pretty clear we're paying in another way.
Oh, absolutely. Data is the currency of the internet these days, and Facebook's pretty open about how much data they collect from us.
And it's not just what we post, is it? It's our location, the devices we use, even the websites we visit outside of Facebook.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They gather data from what you do on their platform, the info in your profile, even from other sources. That like button you see on other websites.
Yeah.
That's feeding information back to Facebook as well.
It's like they're building this massive digital portrait of each of us, isn't it?
I have to admit, it's a bit unnerving. It is something to think about, that's for sure. This whole data collection thing raises big questions about privacy and control online. How much information is too much? Where do we draw the line?
Exactly. So they're collecting all this data. What are they actually doing with it?
Well, as we've talked about, it's what fuels that personalized experience they offer, tailoring your news feeds, suggesting groups and events connecting you with people you might know.
Right, that whole making the world more open and connected thing.
Yeah, but it also powers their super targeted advertising, which is how they make their money.
Right. So basically, the product, our data is what they're selling, even if it's not directly.
That's a view a lot of people have. It's this exchange of data for personalized services and targeted ads that makes up Facebook's whole business model.
Now, to be fair, Facebook does give us some control over our data. We can change our privacy settings to limit what's shared and who can see it.
That's true. They do give you tools to manage your privacy, but working out all those settings can be complicated and time-consuming.
And let's be honest, most people probably just stick with the defaults because it's easier. I know I do.
It's understandable, but it's worth saying that taking the time to understand and change your privacy settings can make a big difference to your online experience. It puts you back in control.
Right. Okay, let's move on to another important part of the terms, limitations of liability. Facebook's pretty clear about what they're not responsible for, even if things go wrong on their platform.
Yes, the terms of service are very specific about what they're not liable for instance. They say they're not liable for how other users behave, what people post, or any damages you might suffer from using their services.
So hang on, if someone posts something horrible about you or you get scammed by a fake advert on Facebook, they basically just shrug and say, not our problem.
Essentially, yes. Their argument is that they're just a platform, not a publisher, so they can't be held responsible for what other people do or say.
So it's like saying, we provide the stage, but we're not responsible for what the actors do.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. They make it possible for people to connect and give them the tools. But what happens on the platform is down to the users.
Which means it's even more important for us, the users, to be careful and know the risks. We can't just assume that everything we see on Facebook is true or safe.
Absolutely. Being informed is key. You need to understand what the platform's limitations are and do what you can to protect yourself.
Well, I think we've covered a huge amount in these deep dives. It's been fascinating, but also a bit scary to realize how powerful and complicated these platforms we use every day really are.
I agree. It makes you realize that we shouldn't take our online experiences for granted.
So what's the main takeaway for our listeners? What do you hope they'll do with all this information?
I think the most important thing is to be aware. Don't just click agree without knowing what you're agreeing to. Have a look at the terms of service. Change your privacy settings to what you're comfortable with, and be careful about what you share and who you interact with. Remember, you have more control than you think.
Well said. And on that note, a huge thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into Facebook's terms of service. It's been a real eye-opener, and I hope it's made you think a bit more about your own digital life.
It's been great discussing these important topics with you.
Stay curious, stay informed, and until next time, happy scrolling. But maybe do it with a bit more awareness from now on. Cheers.